I'll second it. Any public comment?
No public comment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is zoning hearing board application 683 for 1296 Farm Lane.
Hi, I'm George Brosman. I'm representing Jeff Dolan, who's seated beside me. Jeff owns the property at 1296 Farm Lane. It's subject to a zoning hearing board application that we filed. The relief we've requested with the zoning board involves impervious coverage on the property. It's kind of a unique application because property is in the AA zoning district and 13.5% impervious is permitted. And the plan shows that with the proposed improvements and some removal of the driveway there in red up on the screen, the plan is going to comply with the 13.5%. So in a normal situation, we wouldn't need a variance. But this property was part of an older subdivision called Leopard Farms. And it goes back to the late 80s. It was done under the lot averaging provisions of the township code. And the basic concept of lot averaging is if you have a tract of a certain size, in order to allow more suitable development, that the ordinance allows some of the lots to be smaller than they normally would. I think it says that as long as the average lot size in the subdivision meets the requirements, and as long as no lot is smaller than a minimum that they set, a subdivision can be approved. So this was part of the Leopard's Farm subdivision. This was lot number 30 on the plan. I have a copy here of it, and what they did and what the ordinance says now is that when you have a lot averaging subdivision, each lot should be listed how much impervious coverage each lot is going to get. This lot is bigger than the 80,000 square foot minimum for the AA district. And it was allocated a certain amount of impervious, I think around 8,000 square feet. As far as I can tell, at the time, the AA district allowed 10% impervious, and now it allows 13.5, which is still, I think, the lowest allowed in the township. So this lot had been allocated a number that was well below what is permitted by zoning. There was a previous zoning permit approved, I think correctly, that allowed for some smaller improvements to go over the number on the old plan. I think, I don't want to speak for Colleen. I'm not even sure if she was the one that issued that, but I'm not sure if the township was aware that this was a lot averaging subdivision at that time. But I think it was correct to issue the permit, but nonetheless, we've gone to the zoning board to ask for relief. There's a part in the township code, a note in the current lot averaging provisions that says that there should be a note on the recorded plan to limit the impervious on each lot, and that should be a restriction running with the land. And normally townships don't get into restrictions, but it's written into the ordinance, so I'm viewing it as if it's just another ordinance requirement. And we've sought a variance for that. We did a calculation of the impervious coverage that was allocated for the overall subdivision, and there seems to be a large surplus of what would be allowed today at the 13.5%. Of course, I don't know for sure since then how many lots built more things, but the surplus was over 95,000 square feet, over 2 acres. So I would find it hard to believe that much more got built. So Jeff is going to do the whatever is required for stormwater management and follow all the other township ordinances. He's got a letter from his homeowners association, basically signing off on this. They're reserving judgment on the architectural detail. They have a procedure for that. And he's got a letter from the nearest neighbor to the addition, not objecting. So we think that since he's really staying within what would be allowed in the district. He's got a lot that's bigger than the 80,000 square feet. That he ought to be able to get a variance to just have the 13.5%. So that's pretty much our relief.
Do you have any comments on this?
I do not,
No?
no.
Okay.
Except I would, well, I guess I do, sorry.
I thought you were.
I mean, I think there's a conflict, and at one point it says there's 9,244 square feet of existing coverage, which is 10.9%. And then another place it says 9,426 square feet, which is a minor amount. I guess the only question I really have is, do we know how a permit or why a permit was issued for more coverage?
It was just an oversight by the township, so just doing research and digging through it was an oversight. So it was discussed with the applicant's attorney, George Bursman, that the township will permit that maximum number that is on the site now. So if the applicant wants to take out whatever it is and build an addition to what is currently there, that would be fine. Because that's, you know, it is what it is at this point. However, if you want to exceed the impervious surface now, because you already exceeded, you have to get a relief.
So, I mean, the allocation on the subdivision plan was 8,850 square feet.
Yes.
And so the variance is a significant one, but I suppose if they do stormwater management, it may have no harmful effect.
In terms of stormwater.
Right.
Yeah, and it's significant compared to the original allocation, but of course, right in line with what would otherwise be allowed on this lot through the district.
I guess the part that I'm having a hard time with right now, I'm just being completely honest with you, is that if this was solely developed under AA, I have absolutely no problem with what you're asking for. But because this was developed under that lot averaging district where the developer agreed to the amounts per each lot of impervious coverage, and you have 1,426 square feet over that, which the townships are, but that's yours by right now. I think if we let I'm afraid of the precedent we're setting because this project was developed under the AA, under the lot averaging of all the property owners in this who have parcels developed according to the agreed upon impervious coverage for each lot coming in and asking for variances. I'm afraid of that precedent that we'd be setting by approving this at this stage.
Yeah, I hear your concern. I guess my response would be a couple things. One, as far as I can tell, you know, at the time, the impervious was permitted to be 10%, and now it's 13.5. So the circumstances have changed. When the developer agreed to those allocations, he was presumably doing so based on that. Now it's been increased and it's still extremely low. 13.5% is extremely low in my experience. And I believe it is the lowest in the township. So,
yeah.
And I don't see anything on the plan. It says that it's an allocation. I don't think it is an actual deed restriction other than what the code says. There's a note on the plan about, you know, there should be stormwater management for this impervious coverage. I didn't find any deed restriction that was recorded by the developer, so I do think that is a changed circumstance and why there could be a reason to change that. As far as every landowner coming in, I mean, everything would have to be on a case by case basis and see if, that landowner can meet the requirements. I think certainly for lots that are smaller than what is allowed in the AA, they would be different than this lot. This lot is already larger than even if it was, not in the AA, this is, a little larger, so I think this could be distinguished from at least the lots that are smaller than that would be allowed. And they would also have a little bit of control on them just because it's a percentage of it. But I understand your comment.
Tell me if this math makes sense. You have existing 9,244. Right, and you're proposing 11,436. Which is a 24% increase.
Oh,
The zoning code went from 10 to 12.5, or pardon me, to 13.5, you said?
yeah,
So the percentage increase is less than the percentage increase that the zoning code has changed since this was approved. That makes sense, right? So even if you assume the lot averaging and all that across all of these projects, if the zoning code has allowed that much more impervious coverage, I think it's reasonable for the homeowners to ask for that similar percentage increase in their coverage. That would be my one,
Yeah.
approach, but
Do you have any comments on whether this restriction runs with it or?
yeah, that I have no idea about.
Well, the zoning ordinance says that, whether or not it's in the deed, the covenant is really insignificant. The impervious coverage requirements of this development are really the zoning for this development as far as impervious coverage goes. In other words, it isn't a normal AA development. It was under a lot averaging. So that's the impervious coverage that applies to this from a zoning perspective, and that's why they have to get a variance. It's a significant percentage variance, I think, no matter how you look at it.
From the original code with less impervious coverage and with the lower allocated at lot averaging to this lot.
Correct, but again, the zoning that applies to this lot is 8,850 square feet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But your
My
point is
math
well
doesn't-
taken, I understand.
Yeah, my math doesn't take into account the previous approved expansion. It's just the percentage expansion that's been asked for now.
yeah,
But still, to the extent the HOA has a letter that has blessed it. And you'll comply with all the stormwater regulations and so forth. I don't have a problem, to be honest.
Does this set precedent for future?
Well, you'll hear everyone say the same thing, that, zoning cases are really not precedential, but you can be certain that if another lot owner comes in, they're going to cite this application. So in that way, people will come in and say, well, you did it for this guy, so do it for me. But George's point is that this lot is larger, maybe it can justify more coverage than a smaller lot. So there are distinguishing factual circumstances. And I suppose the bottom line is, if the zoning hearing board approves this one, it doesn't mean they have to approve the next one.
And be a different story if someone was asking for 14%. More than the AA zoning allows for now.
Yes,
Only if you had existing
but like what Tom said,
projects that were allocated.
this wasn't developed under AA zone.
I
So that's the stick.
And that's where I won't profess to be an expert with respect to legal implications. I'm just practically speaking, that's where I landed.
You said when this was approved, the impervious was about 10% of lot areas. Is that what it was?
that's what I believe, yeah, that it was permitted to be 10%. in this zone. When they did the lot averaging, and then it was later increased.
You don't have a sense of like what the range of allocation was. It's not like they.
It is on the plan,
Yeah,
I can,
yeah, no, just,
you know what, I did,
I
I
can
have my
imagine it
office
was like they would allocate half. And double, like,
I had my office prepare, take the chart and add it up.
no, okay.
Think we got the numbers right, copying off off the plans.
Yeah.
If I ask you that.
But it wasn't added up, that's how I got to my 92,000 surplus, you know. I sent you this back in March.
Oh, perfect.
So there's a handful that are, just under 15. Yeah, so I just don't see how across the,
Yeah, we're a lot.
even with the precedent, how you would. Somehow fall down a slippery slope that would actually put you in some
deep,
uncomfortable position, but again, that's my opinion.
Yeah, this is lot 30, it's got 84,780 square feet. It's has an allocation of 850.
And your 97,000 square foot surplus was at the time before the zoning change to allow more.
I believe, we took. On the second page,
Yeah.
we, um. I have to check that, if we did that at the 13.5%, I think I did it at the 13.
Yeah, that's what it says. It's
Yeah.
13, so it's really insignificant, that 97 days. I mean, that was not a surplus when they did the lot averaging.
At the
This was
time.
approved.
Right, that's the surplus now with.
That's what I was just trying to
Yeah,
show.
I understand.
That, you know, there was. This development wasn't overbuilt.
Yeah.
With impervious, even though the lots were smaller, there's over 2 acres. Of a surplus under the current rules, and I understand, you know, if we wouldn't need to go to the zoning board if we could follow the rules, strictly. But I did think this was a good exercise to see. You know, was this place, you know, built out to the max, or was there surplus? And there seems to be a lot of surplus.
but if every lot in this lot averaging development came. Hypothetically, came before us and wanted to build out to the 13.5%. This 97,000 square foot surplus would be drawn out of it.
Yeah, I guess then there wouldn't be a surplus, then it would be in compliance with the A district, and they'd all have to do stormwater management, so. I don't think it would actually be a bad thing if that happened, it would be. Even the smaller lots, you know, when you apply a percent to a smaller lot. They get less, so that would control that.
Yeah, like, I mean, lots 1 and then what's that, 26, 27, and 28. Would be existing non-conforming, because they're all over 13.5. Per their original allocation. But the rest are all under. So yes, if every single one who was under, we allowed up to 13.5, you would have. In excess. But if. That's why my math of saying you're not asking for. You're not asking for a bigger percentage increase.
Yeah.
Than the zoning allowed for as a whole.
And Jeff made sure, you know, I know that 13.5 isn't technically applicable, but. Like I said, that's the strictest one in the township, and he's tearing up a substantial part of his driveway to keep within that. So that was, you know, the exercise, you know, he's willing to do that, he's not asking for any more.
Dick, do you have any comments?
Um. I mean, if we do, approve this, could have contingency saying that based on, being over the limit of the total, we're allowing it, so.
What? I'm sorry, what would be a condition based on?
You were just saying that if every other person comes in and wants to do this, we're saying we're granting it now because it's under the limits of the subdivision total.
I mean, we can't really prevent anyone else from coming in or really control what the unknown at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a condition. I don't know, we add to the minutes or put on the record the rationale behind allowing this so that it's not just a blanket. Can be used for a different argument, that's all.
But I do understand that. It was there's a risk of it, other. Lot averages, may not apply. I mean, we're coming to saying we use this as a, like you indicated that. It's a reason to go over the limits in the future too, but it's case by case, but that's why I was thinking about a conditional.
Well, when,
Comments.
what happens when you do this is I write a letter to Colleen explaining what your recommendation was and the reasons, so the reasons would be in that letter if that's accepted. But, I mean, your choices are to either not recommend it, remain neutral, or support it. So, it might be that you just want to remain neutral.
Yeah, I mean, that was my other choice, in the past, I feel like if you stay neutral, that's not being, it's sometimes a positive being neutral too, I mean, we are just a recommendation body, obviously, so.
Anything else?
No. I would make a motion to recommend approval.
You would?
I would. And I would just ask Tom to note that we considered the percentage increase in the impervious. The fact that the stormwater management will be above it. And the fact that under the now in place AA zoning, this would comply. So I just note those three rationales so that someone who doesn't meet those three can say that this is a reason why we need to approve whatever else comes in front of us.
Or three again, can you repeat that?
The percentage increase in the impervious is less than 35%, which is the change from the old AA zoning of 10% to the current AA zoning of 13.5%. That this, well, I guess you don't have to note that stormwater will be. That's in the code anyway, right? You'd have to comply with that no matter what.
Correct.
And the third just being that we'd note that currently impervious now is under 13.5%, which would, again, that may be redundant. Those are the three things I noted as rationales for the recommendation.
So that's your motion.
That's my motion.
Do you want to second that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, same. I'd make a motion that we remain neutral. I'm not comfortable. This project was developed under that lot averaging thing. As I said, if this was developed under AA, I tell you 100 times out of 100 to go ahead and do it. But with this whole lot averaging thing, I am concerned about the precedent we could set. And this was developed under lot averaging. The original developer agreed to sit in non-square feet impervious. And this is a very And subsequently, you received a permit for additional impervious. That's not being contested at all, but I think what is being requested is well in excess of what was originally agreed to by the developer. And while I'd love to see you be able to develop this project as you wish, that has to kind of mesh with what was originally agreed to. And I'm not convinced that there's a path forward right now for me to react favorably on this and send a favorable recommendation to the zoning hearing board. So I'd make a motion that we just remain neutral at this point in time. That's my motion.
Second that.
Okay. Do you have any public comment?
No public comment.
Anybody in the audience? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No,
Guess I did propose that.
say no.
Yeah, I'd say no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so motion that recommendation to remain neutral carries 2-1.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate all the work you did.
What time? Why did the city, Friday? Yeah, see you Friday. Night, everyone.
Hey, George.
Okay, next item on the agenda is North Lakeside Road and Old Lancaster Road intersection study.
Is this different from the?
It's the same as the
So,
CD.
yeah, it's on the.
Yeah, same.
Posted.
And I had a printing error and I printed it to 11/17. I kept it that way because it actually is a little easier to read, so. All right, so good evening, everyone. Chris Williams with Bowman. A few months ago, the planning commission recommended to the board of supervisors approving a proposal for us to do a study of Old Lancaster Road. Ultimately, the board of supervisors approved that proposal as well. We spent some time over the last couple of months doing mostly data collection. What we're going to do, so what we're doing is we essentially at this point, we've set the stage for identifying options for further study. And we're writing the report as we go. So what you see, what you have been given is basically the background, it's the goals, it's all the existing data, it's the existing conditions analysis. It identifies a whole host of potential improvement scenario options, and it identifies what will be at least the draft sort of scorecard criteria that we're going to be using to evaluate the alternatives. This formatting is still a little bit raw, but the content is there. So, you know, if you have any comments on the content, whether it be this evening or at any time, we'd be happy to take that feedback if something isn't worded properly. I'm sure, you know, whether maybe it goes through Colleen, she would certainly provide those comments to us. So today we're going to review the background and the goals. We're going to review existing conditions. We're going to discuss the improvement ideas, and we'll review the draft evaluation criteria. I'm not going to go through every page in detail, but there is a lot of information that was put together here. I do want to just bring your attention to page 1, provides background on the project. First paragraph talks about really what led to this study. The Planning Commission identified certain issues and challenges that exist along Lakeside Avenue and Old Lancaster Road, which gave rise to the need for this study. And so that's spelled out on page 1 in the background. Page 2 just shows the study area sort of highlighted in green. You can see which intersections are signalized. Well, there's only the one being Old Lancaster Road and Route 30. The other intersections are stock controlled. So really just helps set the stage in terms of identifying the study area and which roads would potentially be affected by any traffic flow changes that might occur. If we go to page 3, it provides a little bit more background. It talks about some of the the upper left talks about the early suggestions that the Planning Commission identified that should be studied in this effort. Number one, potentially converting some combination of Old Lancaster Road and Lakeside Avenue, maybe to one-way, in some combination. What that might do is it provides additional space for parking or for pedestrian flow. Number 2, potentially modify the on-street parking for easier and safer access. And then number 3, the third idea that had been identified by the Planning Commission was modifying the section of Old Lancaster Road under the rail line overpass. Right now, it's a very narrow, tight two-way flow under the overpass. The thought being, if we reduce it down to one lane, which would require some kind of creative traffic control, that would provide some added space for pedestrian circulation, which really has long been identified as the issue affecting access and pedestrian connectivity from the village, between the village of Berwyn and communities on the north side. Also on this page, it talks about some themes from the Planning Commission, or excuse me, from the comprehensive plan that really endorse these same concepts. So kind of everything is sort of all kind of we're all pulling in the same direction in terms of the goals that this study will attempt to address. So the next page are goals. So these were goals that we created just based on the feedback that we've gotten thus far. So we've identified 5 goals for the project. And this is probably the first kind of check-in. I would ask the Planning Commission for your feedback if these goals are accurate. Whether you want to provide that feedback this evening or if you want to provide it through Colleen, certainly we can accept that feedback later. But we've identified 5 goals. Number 1 would be to provide a safe pedestrian route to connect the village of Berwyn with the neighborhoods on the north side of the rail line. Number 2, enhance the continuity and safety of the pedestrian experience along Old Lancaster Road and Lakeside Avenue. Number 3, enhance the accessibility and safety of the on-street parking. Number 4, improve vehicle traffic operations and safety within the study area. And then 5, develop solutions which are complementary to the findings of the Berwyn Route 30 Complete Streets Initiative. So that's obviously, as you're well aware, a parallel study which is underway, which does not really specifically address this study area, but whatever we do in this sort of small subset project, we want to be sure that it's complementary to what's happening on Route 30. So these are the draft goals, 5 goals that we've identified. Again, kind of pulled those from what we've already heard from you in terms of what we believe we're hoping to accomplish through this effort. So we can certainly stop now and we can discuss these goals, or if you think they hit the mark, at least at a draft level, we can just sort of accept them for now and move on. And we can certainly take the feedback later in the process. But it is with these 5 goals in mind that, at least if there are no changes, that we're going to continue to move forward through this study.
I have one question.
Yes.
And maybe this goal that I'm thinking maybe encompassed in one of the 5, like with lighting improvement. On some sections of this corridor, whether it's at the bridge and underpass or just on the east or the east side.
Yeah, I think lighting is maybe a detail that my initial reaction is I don't know that it needs to be a standalone goal, but I think it's a detail that, as you said, Nick, it's probably built into these existing goals in terms of the safety aspects and the pedestrian connectivity. Right now, it is dark in that area. Certainly, if we are able to fit a pedestrian route under that rail line, it will be dark for a pedestrian. So I think lighting, when we start getting into the specifics of what the improvement strategies look like, that's probably a detail that should be incorporated. So I don't know that I would change the goals, but I think that's something that we should bake into the strategies.
Okay, and then the goals, I think you mentioned this is what you had derived from the Planning Commission's information that we provided to you, I guess, because I don't know if we specifically talked about goals in general.
You didn't talk about specific goals.
Yeah.
You I guess it was, maybe around this time last year, you had put together a memo of sort of priorities that you would present to the board of supervisors. And it was very well thought out, and it was sort of provided good background. And so from that information, kind of expanding on a little bit, pulling some information from the comprehensive plan, we developed these goals. So it's very much based on, I think, thought process that the planning commission has already put into this.
Okay, no, I'm acceptable of this goal.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Good. Okay, great, excellent. All right, so moving on, the next few pages, I'm gonna move kind of quickly. It's a lot of information, a lot of detail. If we move to. So the next few pages really just are a lot of discussion about existing conditions, but if we move to the next page, Colleen. So this is really hard to read, and I don't expect us to spend any time really looking at this, but we went out, we had a team of 2 folks, and we went out and we literally just measured everything. We want to know how wide the road is, where is the parking located, where's the guide rail, where are the inlets, where are the utility poles, where do we have steps to businesses, what's the distance curb to curb, building to building, because it's a dense roadway network. This would be page 6. And there are page numbers at the bottom of each of the pages. So I don't expect us to be able to look at this in great detail, but this is really, this is not an engineered design plan. This is a study, but we are going to use this information when we get into evaluating alternatives and looking at the feasibility of the alternatives. This establishes like a nice base plan, so we know what we're working with and what our constraints are. The one thing I will point out, so a couple of things on this plan: orange is curbing, green is guide rail. The sort of magenta color are the various stairs and entrances to buildings. There are utility poles identified here. They're sort of hard to see at this scale, but there are utility poles identified. And then we have every sign identified, so just so we have a good sense for what the traffic control is out here. But what I do want to point out is Lakeside Avenue is narrower than Old Lancaster Road. So Lakeside Avenue, which is, from the middle of the plan looking to the right, it's about a 19 to 21 foot wide roadway, right? That's a pretty narrow road, which, that's tight for two-way flow. It's two-way. All roads are two-way today, but Lakeside Avenue is pretty tight today. Old Lancaster Road, it's more varied. It's 21 to 28 feet, still pretty narrow, right? At 21, that's pretty tight. But and it's tightest at that 21 feet, kind of in that area near School of Rock in that area. As you move further to the right, when you get in front of the parking lot in Casey's, it opens up a little bit and it's more like 28 feet. But in all cases, these are fairly narrow roadways. So you're really limited in what you can do. And so that's where one of the ideas the planning commission identified is maybe looking at a one-way scenario, because that will provide maybe more room to do some creative things with either pedestrian flow or on-street parking. So, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, right? You already knew that these were narrow roadways, which is why we're kind of one of the reasons we're embarking upon this study. But in our effort, we've documented it, right? And so it's kind of all proving to be true.
The parking on the back, I guess the south side of Old Lancaster Road.
Yes.
That's private property, right?
This, right, like where the.
No.
21 foot
Where Papa John's.
and the 31
Yeah.
foot
Oh, right here.
dimension. Like
No.
Those
Go across,
parallel-
right there.
Perpendicular parking spaces.
I would imagine I would imagine we don't have right of way. And in fact, I don't, can we get that? We have right of way? I don't.
It's a township road, but I do think it's private because it's designated.
Okay.
It's because when there's like there's a distinct separation between the cartway and where you can park.
Mhm.
And it's pretty tight.
Yeah.
Like,
But
I
then-
would never park there because I would never be able to get out, but it is like labeled for like the specific businesses, like the dance
Yeah,
company
yeah.
or Papa John's or something.
I would guess that parking is partially in public right of way and partially on private property. And usually 9.9 times out of 10, your minimum right of way on roads in Pennsylvania, for my career, has always been 33 feet. And as a local road, it probably has a 33 foot right of way. So if the road's measuring 21 feet, that tells me that a portion of that parking is probably in the right of way.
So like 6 feet on either side in theory, right away.
But, it is a very good question. It is something that we should, as we start looking at implementing changes, we do need to know what public right of way was private property. So do we know if the township has any records of right of way?
Yeah,
Okay.
For sure, so we have, there's a website, I do know that PennDOT really updated their website to give that information.
And we have a PennDOT document with every.
Yeah, and we have,
Okay.
It's at our fingertips.
Okay.
Actually,
We'll have that,
Yeah.
I know where the
I will-
document is,
I
yeah.
will probably reach out tomorrow.
I was gonna say, I can grab it now.
It's not critical for now, but I
I
think.
know where it is,
Okay.
I'll just grab it.
Okay.
I do, I mean,
Thank you.
it certainly implicates what the solution could be, right?
It
for that
will
area,
limit-
What we can and can't.
I think anything we do in here, if we're making changes, anything we do is
Yeah.
probably only gonna be most effective if we have cooperation from the
Yeah,
property owners.
yeah, it makes sense.
Because we will be.
Yeah.
Kind of working within public and private property.
Chris, a question regarding the
20 years ago.
Lakeside Ave, minimum distance 19 foot. I see it listed there. That was measured, right?
Yes.
Approximately measured, I guess we'll find out as well.
That was, everything you see here was physically measured.
So.
I can tell you where that occurs, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it has kind of an idea where it is, but it's in that area. For state roads, typically you don't want to go under 10 lanes, right? 20 foot
I would agree.
to a.
Yeah,
But is there a different criteria for local?
no. No, I would use the same criteria. A road is a road, and I think,
Can you go under 10?
can you legally, I think you can. But I think. We need to look. At the volume of traffic, and any changes we make to traffic flow is gonna have a.
No,
And-
I'm, it's currently a compliant road then, right? It's 19.
Right, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's illegal to be 19 feet. But I think. I think 10-foot lanes, 20-foot minimum width is probably. Good minimum goal as a standard. So what we may identify through this. Now, that's if we keep it as two-way, right? Maybe if we go to one way, then we solve the problem.
I'm just saying if there's an accident happen, there's size, so somebody wants to sue them.
Oh, there are plenty of rural roads throughout Chester County that are less than 20 feet. It. Yeah, happens all the time. As these farm roads have been paved over. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just double check 19 feet in terms of. Legality, in terms of not so much from a legal perspective, but more from an engineering standards perspective, but I believe it's fine. So anyway, didn't need to spend a lot of time on this, but just to let you know that we've done kind of an exhaustive inventory of what we're dealing with, and this is going to be more fruitful as we go forward, evaluating sort of the feasibility and how we might implement certain improvements. So, this really is setting the stage and will make our job a little bit easier going forward. So if we skip to page 8. You have a question?
On the traffic counts when you get there.
Okay, that's where I was gonna go next. So we did traffic counts. So we counted from 7 AM to 9 AM and from 2 PM to 7 PM. The peak hour, as shown here, the peak hour in the morning is 7:45 to 8:45. Peak hour in the evening is 5 PM to 6 PM. So not at all surprising. It really coincides with your commuter peak period. But these are the volumes. These are the peak hour volumes. So the numbers immediately behind the arrow is the morning volumes, and then the numbers behind that are kind of bracketed with the parentheses, those are the evening rush hour numbers. So these show turning movements
These.
at each
total movements
intersection.
or average movements per hour.
This is total for the hour, right? So do you have a number in mind?
The 0 parentheses 9 movements going under the bridge.
That's a right turn.
That's just the right turn. So that's just coming up Lakeside Avenue, making the right turn
To go under the railroad bridge.
to go from that direction. But then in the opposing direction,
Yeah.
Old Lancaster Road, it's 80 in the morning, 105 in the afternoon. So you have, So in the afternoon, in the evening rush hour, going under the bridge is 105 plus none, so it's gonna be
Yeah,
114.
Yeah.
But yes,
but there's much more traffic southbound.
right, so that's some of the key takeaways from this,
Yeah.
right? There's not a lot of traffic using Lakeside. Most of the traffic is using
Yeah.
Old Lancaster. A couple of obvious, my opinion, reasons for that. I live to the north. Want to go to the south, you're always gonna gravitate to the traffic signal because it gives you controlled access out to Route 30. Also, as you further west, you're more in the heart of the village of Berlin, which is the commercial center. So I think natural tendency is that's where folks want to go. Plus, you've got the businesses, you've got, handles and other things happening here. So I think the natural tendency, traffic is really drawn more to this direction. The volumes are lighter at some of these intersections, but the predominant movement is the eastbound left and the southbound right here. And then at this intersection at Francis, Old Lancaster, Warren, it's the Francis Avenue right turn and then the Old Lancaster left turn, which, takes you up towards, heading up towards Route 202 and points beyond. But you can see a very obvious traffic flow, a very obvious pattern. Not surprising probably to anybody that lives out here that experiences this. But there are some very clear patterns.
But does that make sense to you, Nick? That it's almost like triple the amount of traffic southbound through that tunnel as there is northbound. I'm surprised it's that skewed. But I don't.
It's not
I'm not that familiar
Yeah,
with
it's
it.
not balanced
Yeah,
northbound versus southbound.
wouldn't have guessed that, but I'm not that close to it, so. And you live right up north of that, right, Nick?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this, what I'm really surprised is the morning is up without the parentheses, right?
Morning is not, is right behind the arrows, no parentheses,
Yeah, coming underneath the tunnel, going south, I mean, 221 cars.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of cars for a road that's.
Yeah.
That narrow, I mean, anything over 150 is a lot, I think, if you think about 221. Just did the math, it's like 3.7 cars per minute. And then this is a peak hour, and this is just 1 hour.
This is the
1
peak,
hour.
this is the peak 60 minutes
Yeah.
in the morning. So the peak 60 minutes in the morning and then the peak 60 minutes in the evening.
Yeah, and this is just 1 day count that was done.
One day,
Yeah.
right, but experience shows that it's probably consistent one day to the next.
We got a
Do you have a date this was counted?
April 30th, Thursday, I believe it was a Thursday.
hang on, did you?
Oh,
Sorry, yeah.
I was gonna tell you that, that's a way to cut through to avoid the Bridge Street traffic jam.
So
With
that's
the
why,
schools,
So school hours, so you
Yeah.
can cut down through this way from,
and it's less of an issue in the evening because school's let out,
right,
right?
makes sense.
That does
Yeah,
make
whereas
sense.
those two lights are a nightmare.
And the morning peak always overlaps with your school peak, where in the evening you don't have that overlap. Yeah. Thank you.
Makes sense.
That's very helpful. Thanks.
I have kids in the schools, so it's.
I'm just making a note of that.
Yeah,
If
that's a very good comment. It's, people, there aren't too many places you go under the.
Right. Yeah, I just would have guessed it would be more balanced and. Like, I thought making the tunnel one way would be a non-option because the traffic would be relatively balanced in both directions. I'm not saying that. This means it isn't, but it's a no-brainer, but I am surprised that it's 3-1.
I wonder. Once we make those improvements on Bridge Street, if they ever make those improvements, if that's what dramatically.
That'll,
When our grandkids.
yeah, I mean, that, we approve that intersection, which, right, not happening tomorrow, but yeah, that could take some of the pressure off here. Yeah, for sure.
What's good, sorry.
Like, I can say, the reason you might not see quite as much going. The other way is if you're going, you can go out Lancaster, if you're going. East, you can go out Lancaster Avenue to Waterloo or whatever,
Across
Right.
there.
come down that way.
Can you give your name and your address?
My name is Douglas Bellew. I'm actually in Different, but I live in Poplar Avenue, right behind the horse show.
So Colleen, if you can go forward 2 pages, there's another, maybe one more. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. So this is page 12. So here we did just a little exhibit showing what the flow is for each hour. And so just looking at Lakeside and Old Lancaster. So Old Lancaster, I'll say to the left or to the west of the rail line. Your flow is heaviest kind of in that westbound direction in the morning. And in the afternoon, it gets close, but never quite, and it's kind of what we just talked about, right? In the afternoon, it gets close, never quite matches the 204 that you're seeing in the morning. In the afternoon, which is the orange, the numbers in the morning are light and the volumes are heavier in the afternoon for each hour of the day. And then again, Lakeside Avenue and sort of every hour, Lakeside Avenue is carrying lesser volume. So this just really shows that fluctuation hour by hour. But I don't think it's telling us anything new that the peak hour volumes weren't also telling us. It's pretty consistent. Next page. So these are just pedestrian counts. Typically we count pedestrians crossing at each intersection, which is what we have at each of these intersections, and there's not many pedestrians other than at Old Lancaster and Midland, which is where we have a signal. That's where we want pedestrians crossing. So you do have some pedestrians crossing. Now I will say these are not peak hour pedestrian counts. These are for the entire period. So the 7 to 9 and the 2 to 7. And the reason we did that is the numbers would have been so small if we just showed you the hourly volume. So we just wanted to capture all of the pedestrian counts. But at the intersection of Lakeside and Old Lancaster, because that is sort of a critical intersection in traffic flow, here we actually did turning movements for the pedestrians. And as you might expect, there's almost nobody walking at that intersection. We did get a few, right? There's a few brave souls. We have some video that shows people walking their dog. I mean, people will do it, but it is not a lot. We're kind of coincidentally showing 8 people. You know, this is not a 4-way intersection, it's a 3-way intersection, but you do have a few parking spaces here that is behind the Verizon building. Maybe patrons of Casey's may park there as well. So there are 8 people. I imagine those are folks that are just parking and then walking, you know, to go to Casey's or go somewhere.
I will say, I think some of the weekend pedestrian volume could be a little bit higher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, especially during farmers market time and now. Good. So we did speed data as well. So the next page 14 shows
There is some
speeds.
place that people obey the speed limit.
Yeah. So here's a good case study where it makes sense to, when you have on-street parking and you have narrow roads and you have obstacles up against the edge of the road, it really does slow traffic down, right? When you have high pedestrian activity or just people activity, parking, narrow roads, you have no choice but to travel slow. So these roads are posted at 25 miles per hour. And for the most part, I mean, people are traveling, we documented the 50th percentile, which is like you're kind of half the people are traveling below that speed, half the people are traveling above that speed. The 50th percentile is probably a really good indicator of just typical driving behavior. And then your 85th percentile speed, that's sort of the upper end limit. That's often a value used for roadway design purposes. So that's the value at which 85% of your traffic is traveling at or below that speed. But in all cases, everybody's right within sort of the 25 mile an hour speed limit. So at least that's good to see.
Chris, do you ordinarily see the 85th so close to the 50?
No,
Or is that kind of telling from that data?
that is telling. And usually you almost always see the 85th percentile above the posted, which here you're not seeing that. And again, I
Really
think
is a
local
powerful
conditions.
indicator of the proof of the tight road.
Yeah,
controlling.
yeah, the conditions that are constraining the ability of traffic to travel at a high rate of speed.
Maybe you've already get it's coming, but was there any crash data?
That's coming next.
Okay.
Great. So flip 2 pages. So we did pick up crash data. So this is just giving us the reportable crash data. So PennDOT defines a reportable crash as any incident in which either somebody was injured or, God forbid, a fatality, or if a vehicle had to be towed. So so it doesn't include your non-fender benders that either didn't even get a police report, or it was just the vehicles could drive away under their own power. So these are reportable crashes, your highest, not a lot of crashes. This is 5 years worth of data, and the most crashes we have 5 at Lakeside and 30. That's an average of 1 a year. And we have an average of 1 a year up at Warren, Francis, and Old Lancaster. Now they're all angle crashes. But there's just not a lot of them. So 1 a year, I mean, this does not scream to me as
There's only been one accident coming out of that shopping center in 5 years.
coming out of wood shopping center.
Report.
Yeah. The 1A, right under Lancaster Avenue. Right where it says Lancaster Avenue.
Oh, here,
Yeah.
Reportable. Again, these are reportables. Yeah, reportables. Now, this is 2021 to 2025. Trader Joe's hadn't opened.
Right.
Right, so we don't have data yet for 2026.
Yes.
There's a center median there too, right?
There is it's not a median, it's a painted, like a painted two-way left turn lane.
In there, it helps.
That helps big time.
I'm shocked these numbers are so low.
If we were to capture your non-reportables, you're gonna see higher numbers, but these are your higher severity, higher damage crashes, which is often what we use for safety evaluations. And, the awkward intersection right at the sort of the south side of the rail line, so Old Lancaster, Lakeside, there were no crashes, which, I think some of this speaks to the fact that the people that are driving that intersection, they're doing it every day. They're experienced drivers. They understand how to drive it. They do it with caution. And I think fortunately, we don't have a higher incident of crashes.
Yeah, I mean, this makes sense to me, the lakeside being such a skew, I mean, it is very dangerous. I mean, I really feel bad for the people coming on the north side.
Yeah.
Lakeside,
That's a tough movement.
yeah.
And it is also logical in that it goes to show you that accessing Route 30 under the control of a traffic signal is going to always be safer than doing it at a stop sign. Yeah. So if we can skip ahead to the next figure, so there we go. So levels of service, you've also heard traffic engineers come here and talk about levels of service. This is simply how we measure delay at intersections. I'm just going to cut to the chase. The short version is these intersections in and of themselves are not operating today with a lot of delay. Every one of these intersections is operating at an overall level of service A. Most movements are operating really well. You do have some delays on your side streets at Route 30, which is typical, right? That's what's going to normally happen. It takes a little bit longer when you're on Lakeside, to wait in order to be able to pull out on the Route 30. Just the very nature of a traffic signal, they're intended to create delay because you have a red light, so you have to stop. So you have level of service D waiting to then pull out onto Route 30. But even level of service D in a built up suburban environment, I mean, these are highly acceptable levels of service. So what it tells me is we're not dealing with an operational issue that should, it kind of will allow us to be creative when we look at alternatives. The delays are not a limiting factor. All right, so now is where, so we can skip ahead to the next figure. So we probably came up with too many options. This is like when I go grocery shopping, which I don't like to go grocery shopping because if I'm going to buy salad dressing, I wish there was just one choice of salad dressing, not 20 choices of salad dressing. We probably came up with too many options, but we had a little fun with it and we were just trying to get creative. When the planning commission came up with the idea for this study, you did mention, I think the only thing that you really mentioned was potentially going one way, but that was all it said. It didn't say which direction. So if we go one way, we can go one way in one direction, one way in the other direction. So we're going to walk through a series of alternatives. The goal in all this is we need to identify 2 to 3 alternatives. It'll probably be 3 that we want to carry forward for further study. And we do need that feedback from the planning commission in order for us to go to instead. So I'm going to stand here. So this is the do nothing, right? So this is no build. This is what it is today, right? So everything's, you got stop signs, you got two-way flow on all these roads. So we are going to. So the next step after today is we are gonna take all of our existing data, we're gonna project it 20 years into the future. That's gonna match up with the 20-year horizon that we're using for the Route 30 corridor study, so that we're working kind of from the same sheet of music. So we're gonna project our numbers 20 years into the future, and then we're gonna evaluate the performance of these alternatives. We need to pick 3. We are gonna carry forward a do-nothing alternative. So what happens in 20 years if we leave the roads the way they are today? So we will carry this option forward, because that's our benchmark that we will compare against. So this one's we are carrying this one forward. If we go to the next page, Colleen. So this is option A, figure 9A. So one thing that is consistent with every one of these options, because it was called out as a goal of the planning commission to provide pedestrian access under the rail line. In every option, we are going to model what happens if we go to a 1 lane, like a reversible lane scenario under the rail line. And that would theoretically then give us the added space for a pedestrian path under the rail line. So you will see this single double-headed blue line, single lane, 2-way access. That is an alternative that we are going to study under every scenario. So that's going to be more of a given. What is not a given is what do we do with Lakeside Avenue and Old Lancaster Road? So in option A, it's showing, we already know that today, most people are coming under the rail line and they're making that right turn because they want to go out to the signal. So in option A, it supports that existing traffic pattern of traffic wanting to use the signal to gain access to Route 30. So this is a one-way westbound flow of Old Lancaster Road. Now in this option A, we're keeping Lakeside Avenue 2-way. What we're showing in option A as well is you've got the width right at the intersection. So we thought there's no reason to make all of Old Lancaster Road 1-way. So just the throat of the intersection, maybe up to the parking lot for handlers and those businesses. This you could maintain 2-way. It's really in here where it's tight up against the businesses that are close to the road that we would look to go 1-way.
Is that, in your experience, is something like that where, is that realistic? In terms of, you're gonna have a lot of people, like, is there any way to warn drivers of that? The drivers that are gonna be turning left from Lancaster, right from Lancaster, that might maybe want to go into Old Lancaster Road, you know, they're gonna be able to make that turn, but then they're within 100 feet, they're gonna be hit with a do not enter sign.
They will.
Is that, in your experience, is that something that would work? Or is that just gonna cause a lot of congestion of people cutting through that parking lot into?
In the beginning, yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I think it's gonna create some cut through in that parking lot. But then eventually, like everything else, I think,
Yeah,
folks will get used to it.
okay,
But yes, it will be, there will need to be signage that accompanies anything we do out here.
yeah,
And it'll take a little getting used to.
yeah. Okay,
But it's not a problem that I don't think we can easily avoid
okay,
in the beginning.
Okay.
So you don't need to pick right now. I would say, why don't we run through all of them and then we can decide which 3 do we want to carry forward. So before we move off this, so what are we doing? So what we've changed is we've eliminated the traffic flow in this direction, right? So that's what's being impacted, right? The folks today that are coming up here. Now, we know less people are using Old Lancaster Road in that direction, more of them are using it in this direction. So you're not affecting quite as many, but we are affecting the people that want to go eastbound on Lancaster Road. So what's going to happen to them under this scenario? Well, ideally, they'll make the left. And so this option will add more traffic to Lakeside Avenue, right? Because they're going to do this, come up here. Now we run the risk. Do we unintentionally create like a cut through pattern if people try to cut through some of these businesses? That's going to be a risk with every one of these options.
people do that, I do that today.
Right. People do it, right.
You're the guy.
But if you cut through Casey's, it's still 1-way, so you
Yeah.
won't be able to, make that right. So you'd end up kind of cutting through further back. So that, what we want people to do under this scenario is come down to Lakeside Avenue.
It's a tough turn.
Would that also push people to Bridge Street in the morning? Because
Coming eastbound,
Yeah.
normally, if I was looking to cross the train tracks, I would pass by Bridge Street to go the way you were telling me I can no longer go
Right.
here. So I think that a consequence of this is pushing traffic towards Bridge Street.
it could,
Or they just go down.
or they could have the lakeside, because at least it's close.
That's a tough thing.
Is there a way to ameliorate that term?
Yeah, and those are the things that we're gonna have to look at in the study, right? So we're not, that's the next step. So, okay, how much traffic have we pushed here? Do we think this intersection can handle it? Do we need to make some, do we need to adjust the alignment of that intersection to make that an easier turn, right? So those are the improvements. That is part of the next step.
I mean. I like the idea of Bull Lancaster Road being. That one way, but I'd almost say. From the, maybe make Lakeside one way.
Well, why don't we go through every option? Because I guarantee that's an option I have here.
Real quick, I know you mentioned all the option will have one lane under the bridge.
Yeah.
Are you looking at capacity for that?
We would.
Or you will, we haven't?
We haven't yet. So right now, we're just picking you're telling us. You know, we got a dozen flavors of ice cream. We're telling you gotta pick your three favorite flavors and then we're gonna study those.
I didn't say it.
So if we go to the next one. So option B, so option B is very similar to option A, except it's only converting this small section to one way. Similar to keeping the two-way flow here to get access to the parking lot. This is keeping two-way flow at least here for folks that want to get up into this parking lot or people that want to get into the parking here for Casey. So it's a little bit less disruptive right in this area. But it's kind of a close cousin from the earlier option that we just saw. But you still will have that kind of anybody that's kind of traveling through the area that today, to your point, is making that movement, right? They're gonna need to use Lakeside Avenue, and so we are gonna be looking at some improvements needed here. But this is really very similar to the option A. It's just what it's doing is we're trying to be sensitive to the businesses out here as well and still try to maintain access to parking. So if we go to option C. So now this is making the entire section one road, so make Lakeside Animal run sort of one way over the entire length. So now you're, the same situation, people today that do this, they'll now have to do this. What I like about this is it solves what we talked about. Lakeside is a very narrow road, right? So it's gonna work easier as a one-lane road. It's gonna feel a little bit safer. But, and there are no sidewalks on Lakeside, so doing something like this, does it create an opportunity for sidewalks? It does, potentially. But, that traffic will now divert here, as with the other option. But under the other options, we kept Lakeside two-way. Not a lot of people are doing this today, but some do. So they're now affected by this. So they're gonna have, anybody that today uses Lakeside, they're gonna have to go out to the safe. Or they might be penalty cases, right? So there's a potential case, or, not, I keep saying cases, but any of these businesses that provide the cut through.
And it was only, 5 accidents, but the people making that left off of Lakeside on the 30 was one of the hot spots for that.
It is a hot spot, and I think any of these options so far, they're all pushing more traffic to this intersection, so that's something we need to be aware of. So I think what each of these options, not every option, but one of the things we're gonna look at is with these options, not only does that potentially change how this intersection is configured, do we need to straighten it out, tee it up at 90 degrees or a little bit closer to 90 degrees, because today it is at a skewed angle. But should we be looking at some kind of enhanced traffic control here? Do we need a traffic signal? This is what we'll look at.
I mean, my immediate reaction is that if you convert that to one way, my presumption would be that the majority of accidents at that intersection of Lakeside and Lancaster are people
coming out.
coming out of Lakeside
Maybe
and
solve
turning,
that.
and turning left onto Lancaster,
Right.
and crossing the 2 lanes of traffic. And that would solve that by converting it to a one-way.
Yeah, we're forcing them all to
Yeah.
come to a signal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All,
So-
all 5 actions that's all angled.
So making the left, yeah,
So if we can divert them to a signal, it makes that safer.
yeah.
But we need to, what we need to make sure with all this is, okay,
The left.
have we exacerbated a capacity issue here? So
Yeah.
again, it's like you push traffic in one direction, you gotta make sure we're not creating a problem elsewhere.
Yeah.
We go to D. So now we're looking at almost each of the same options, but we're just changing the flow. So instead of going one way westbound, Old Lancaster, this option D is going one way eastbound. So to your point, right, now I can make that movement as I do today to head north. But anybody and we know that the more predominant movement is for folks that come south and go in this direction, well, they can no longer do that with option V. So where are they gonna go? Well, they're likely gonna do this. They're gonna come out the late side. So I think option D will almost certainly warrant a traffic signal at the side. Option E. So again, option E is the close cousin to option D. It's the same thing, except it just limits the section of one way and maintains two-way access to the parking lot. But it will have that same effect of not allowing that heavy southbound right over to the signal at Midland, so you're now gonna be sending all that traffic out Midside. So again, very likely you're warranting a traffic signal at this location. Very possible.
Chris, does it have to be a signal? Can it be a four-way
Four-way,
stop?
not on Route 30.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, it would either have to be a signal, could be a roundabout. I mean, it's gonna be some kind of enhanced traffic control. And I'm speculating that that's what's needed, because we haven't done that yet, but I'm, kind of thinking worst case, that's probably what you're looking
And
at.
then turning movements that were coming down and going right are probably going west. So the expectation is that if you interrupt that, you are gonna have a strong westward movement from that location.
Yes. Right. Yeah, there are people that make the left, but the predominant movement here is the right
Yeah.
to go west. So now that traffic will be
Yeah,
here.
the reality, if somebody's making a left, they can already make that by going out Lakeside, maybe that's problematic too, but, yeah. Okay, thanks.
And then F. So F is just looking at. Probably it's the. Paired up with option C, which is making the whole thing one way, it's just one way in the other direction.
And that would definitely necessitate a traffic signal.
Something-
Lakeside,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if we go to G, so G, the last two are G and H, and these are out of the box ideas. And maybe not something that's, well, I shouldn't try to influence the jury here, but option G was closing Old Lancaster Road, making it more of just like a pedestrian plaza. Make it a pedestrian, just a place where you could do pop-up tents and, different things and markets and all sorts of, it's a pedestrian plaza. And so you maintain two-way flow up to the parking lots, but this becomes a pedestrian way only. So now all vehicular traffic is gonna be headed out to Lakeside. Certainly would require a roundabout or a signal or some kind of enhanced traffic control. You've maintained access at least to the parking, but you're not allowing Old Lancaster Road, because the businesses are up close to the road. The thought was, let's get creative. What if we made it a pedestrian, like a curbless street sort of concept? Tom probably can come up with a dozen examples where he's seen this, he's seen it in Europe somewhere. But that's the idea with option G. A little bit out of the box, maybe not something we're ready to do here. And then we go to H is even more out of the box. And there is a disclaimer in here that this was entirely an idea by the author. This is not the township. I don't want So the thought was, if we were to make this a pedestrian only plaza, and if we just don't have the appetite for the impacts that might happen at Lakeside in 30, what if there was a new access that were to go right out to Route 30? Obviously, that's going to impact private property and businesses. So it's not anything we control. This is not an option that we would really implement in the short term. But it might be an interesting idea, whether we study it now or we study it later. Who knows what the future holds? If somebody were to come in and buy up and redevelop all these properties, they might have interest in an access that connects between Old Lancaster and Route 30. And you could potentially turn your buildings, they could front on this little alley concept. And it just creates just another connection to Route 30. And does so without necessarily negatively impacting the adjacent intersections. Again, out of the box, nothing that because it requires private property and property owner coordination, nothing that would get implemented in the short term, so in the short run, so maybe nothing, whether we evaluate it now or not, I'll leave that up to you. But it was just sort of an out of the box idea.
Something tells me though that would lead to even more traffic through the underpass. And
Making it more convenient.
is that why to get to that neighborhood behind? And if we're gonna make the underpass a single lane, there might be a lot of traffic backups. Potentially on the Lancaster.
And that's a great point. So making this a single lane. Nick, I'm fully expecting that we're gonna be looking at signalization. As one of the options to make this a single lane. You see it.
So,
352 is two-way. What's that?
I think, is it behind Whole Foods in Devon?
Is it one way? Is it one
They've got
way?
the yellow lights.
Yeah. There are several examples in Chester County where they have one
And
lane.
Johnson.
Just stop signs on.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah,
In
So-
downtown.
and so you tend to need traffic signals in those situations. So I think we are gonna be looking at potential signal control here. If we add a fourth leg, it's gonna make that more complicated.
Yeah.
But again, since we were just being creative and throwing ideas against the wall, it was an idea.
And if this was an idea, I mean, I think the entrance of the, characters, you want to align it there. maybe.
You probably would want to. Yep.
I mean, my immediate reaction is that C and F seem to be the most feasible. Most realistic, I guess.
Which one's in C?
Option C and option F. And I'd give the precedence to option C because it potentially negates the need for a signal at Lakeside.
Right.
Because with option F, everything's going in the other direction and we definitely need a signal on that side, whereas here you might not.
So our scope of work is we can pick up to 3. So if there's, we can study up to 3, if there's 3 that you like. This is the biggest feedback we're hoping to get tonight is that what are the 3 options that we carry forward for further study?
and doing nothing is not one of the options.
That'll be a 4th, right? It's do nothing. Well, we are gonna carry that forward, plus 3 others.
Just. No, I'll defer to people who know this better. I guess I would just throw out there, none of the options have the tunnel becoming one way. They all hinge on a way to maintain two-way flow
With signal.
and allow pedestrians.
Yeah.
If that's doable, I think that solved most of the.
And can I ask about,
Problem.
that's a question I had, how realistic to put a pedestrian tunnel 6 feet to the west of the two-way traffic? Like, I know that sounds crazy, but, in the scheme of these things and I don't
Like
know.
a
if it's
separate
great.
board, you mean?
Yes, and I've been surprised how easy it is. I've designed 2 or 3 pipes under a railroad and I was surprised how easy it was. All done with standard detail, so is that a realistic option that? Here are the standard details, people do it all the time. I mean, there's pedestrian underpasses under all of the R5.
Anything's possible with money, right? So, but I mean, I do think it's doable.
So is it driving cost, though? Is it impractical from a cost perspective?
I think it's the timeline to do it is probably, it's a longer timeline to get it done because of the cost and the property, right? The adjoining, the land on either side, I assume is all privately owned, so, you know, how we make that connection and where it comes out. It's not on land that we would own, so there'd be there'd be right of way acquisition involved, so I think it's a heavier lift.
It's not a real practical option. And
I don't
see it.
So I think it is something that we should be planning for the future. But I think if we want to achieve a pedestrian route, a connection in the near term, how do you define near term? Within the next 5 years, I think we should look at doing.
But if we're converting the underpass to making this a one lane because it's signalized with the two-way access. We're buying a certain amount of space
Yes.
in there to create a pedestrian sidewalk.
That's right.
Separated from the road,
From the lane.
from the traffic lane.
Yes. Yeah, it's 20 feet, I think was the dimension under the rail line, that's curb to curb.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you make it a one lane. Yeah, you easily have room for a pedestrian route and a travel lane.
Yeah.
So a little bit of vehicular traffic, probably a lot less than what it would take to build a pedestrian underpass along the side. Just like that's your trade-off, a little bit of aggravation for pedestrians or many millions.
It's very expensive and the land costs, and property impacts. Again, I think long-term, I think it is something that we should, if nothing else, we should document it as something we'd like to pursue in the future, but it's just not gonna happen.
And just by converting this to the two-way access in the single lane, it's going to dramatically calm the speed going under the underpass next to the pedestrian.
We don't really have a speeding issue there, but yes.
So it should be pretty safe.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
What on street view, what's about, I don't know, 30-40 yards to the east. Looks like there's a drainage culvert underneath the train tracks. Like what Don is describing. This is right.
Yeah.
I don't know, I had no idea. I wouldn't have ever thought of that, but it's worth looking at that area to the east because there's no structures or anything in it. So it may not be, I don't know what the right of way is, but it's not like, it's certainly easier than putting a road through the middle of the horizons or that was an option H.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I know.
again, that was just sort of pie in the sky, sort of futuristic thinking. I think anything we do here, you're also dealing with Amtrak, which is not
Yes.
easy to do.
No,
I was about to
that's the
say.
problem.
Yeah. You know, just the Amtrak.
Yeah.
Right of way process, that in of itself is a project for
It
someone.
can take 3 years to get them to return a phone call.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, my comment would just be, I think all of these. 90% of the solution is in. The pedestrian connection and making sure that those two intersections on either side can accommodate the pedestrian and traffic flow that. Safely.
Yes.
I think that is 90% of the problem and. The changing of the traffic flow on Old Lancaster and Lakeside is 10% of the problem and may create 90% of the resistance. So that's just my 2 cents.
And I think you just summarized the, essentially that's the issue for you all here, because it sounds like you can get safe pedestrian crossing, but it's gonna come at inconvenience for the drivers, and that would seem to be your trade-off, right?
Right, but I mean, even. If we could just figure out a way to deal with the single lane two-way access, I don't think changing. Old Lancaster and Lakeside to one way.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference beyond that.
Right.
I think I'd rather you focus on. The solution of those two intersections and allowing pedestrian access through them.
That could be one option, is just doing that as a standalone.
I would see that as an option. I do think that there is a benefit though towards the one-way traffic flow. In terms of safety, certainly, and in terms of giving us the potential for sidewalk fix.
Yeah,
I
because
agree with all that. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't make the perfect the enemy of the good, so
Yeah.
to speak. That's all. I just want to make sure if we can solve
And that's-
90% of the problem, let's do that.
Yeah.
Without changing the traffic flow. If we can change the traffic flow and everybody's caught in and it makes sense, great.
I think you're both right, and I do think if we can make this work, then I think that does solve the biggest issue. If we've done nothing to Old Lancaster and Lakeside, we can get pedestrians to here, but then they have no place to walk, and so it'd be an added perk if we can then provide, sidewalk and do something so that they have a safe place as they continue their
So
pedestrian journey.
maybe
So-
we study just doing the single lane two-way access,
That is a standalone option,
and then we can study
C
C,
and F,
yeah.
and F. Basically one way in one direction, one way in the other direction. Probably the simplest.
Seems like that covers most of
Yeah.
your bases.
And Chris, is the option zero that's the baseline, is that including the controlling the signalized control under?
No, that's keeping it as is today, because that, we're gonna compare everything against that. Yeah.
If you think that's the path to least resistance, then we can compare that.
I agree.
To the
And then
other
there-
potential ways we can make this lead.
And then there's the additional enhancements.
Yeah.
I just, like I said,
What
I
is
hate to get.
What is this then? Is it gonna be, the business is gonna be kind of landlocked, I guess, like with Papa John's and.
Just anything that's
Change.
changing someone's daily habits.
I mean, honestly, if
It's resistance.
so we can provide more parking spaces for those businesses by converting those streets to one way.
That's.
I agree, it should be studied, I just want to make
Get their
it.
interest.
Yeah, I think that would definitely get their interest.
Yeah.
Are C and F opposites?
Yes.
Yeah,
Just
so that makes that seems like a natural blend to study.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I do know there's owners or people that run Casey, they have complained about current cut throughs and stuff, and whatever you go with there, we'd have to look at something like some sort of traffic calming measure between the Lancaster and Old Lancaster, like.
It does feel like the lakeside intersection, there's a grass, it doesn't need to be that harsh, that could be rounded off a lot more easily than others.
This intersection.
Yeah.
Just. And actually, now I'm looking at it, I think if we do this option C, which diverts Old Lancaster away from the bridge, that would naturally disincentivize people from cutting through Casey's who might be trying to go back to that neighborhood, because they wouldn't be able to make a right turn on Old Lancaster to get to the bridge.
Correct.
So they'd be forced to go down to Lakeside. So that
Correct.
that would be a sort of a natural,
natural-
the only cut through traffic for Casey's would be maybe the delivery guys from Papa John's or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's stop you.
So the three that you think are best are the maintaining the road in its current two-way with the signalization allowing pedestrian interface, and then an evaluation of one way in both directions, maintaining the,
Yes.
yeah, kind of makes some sense there. It seems to.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense.
Chris, just me being a traffic engineer, I mean, I said the volumes seem pretty high and even though the signal is gonna be challenging under the bridge.
I mean, I assume that study would look at like where they queue and how many cars.
We're gonna have to look at all that.
First, could you go to figure, could you go to figure two?
Maybe
There's
Figure two.
9 big.
of the options.
No, not the options, way back, figure two.
Which, oh, this one?
That one right there.
Existing road.
Yeah. So, so what I'm about to say is 3 items. The first of which is in regard to the options that you presented and the ones that from the commission favor. Since this is existing roadway conditions, could you remove from Route 30 where there is no curb? So for example, just east of Casey's is Verizon. And it's like a continuous open curb cut at Casey's and Verizon. Just go right there. There's no curb there.
I think there's like a hill right between Casey and the Verizon. There's like I think there's a hill.
Yeah, it's a grade difference here to here. Casey's sits higher.
Well, I think he's talking about just the line in general, there's no curve, I mean, there might be a pole there, but you're saying there's no curve right here, right?
Right?
Yeah.
There's no curb there, I mean, you could just.
Yeah, I don't, that probably shouldn't be there,
That's-
unless
yeah,
it's,
so-
unless it's depressed curve.
It may be, but I don't think it is. So my first comment is remove that. The second comment is getting ready for the August 4th planning commission meeting to present complete street drawings and streetscape. Your office sent our office the CAD drawings. And those CAD drawings show continuous curb and grass strip that seals off Casey's and Verizon. So if you could double check,
Yeah, we're not sealing off that's.
yeah, if you can double check
Yeah.
with whoever did those drawings, so they match these drawings.
Yeah.
Okay,
Who's handling that? Is Aaron handling that?
well, Aaron and I are, but Randy sent it. And whatever they sent doesn't match what you're showing tonight.
Okay,
Okay. And then the third item is by August 4th, will you have some additional items figured out that will clarify what's happening? on
I'll have more information.
330?
So ultimately, the Board of Supervisors approved the proposal. They asked to be a part of the decision-making process. So everything that I've done with you this evening and the selected alternatives, I have to get their blessing as well. They want, I don't have to, that sounds negative. They want to be kept informed. They've authorized the study, and rightly so, they want to basically endorse the decisions along the way. So in an ideal world, tomorrow I would start analyzing these three scenarios, and I probably am, because I do think there's aspects of these that I'm pretty confident the Board of Supervisors will also support. But I am limited as to how far forward I can go, because the Board of Supervisors need to technically bless the same short list of alternatives. I say all that because we're scheduled to go in front of the board on July 20th.
Yep.
I'm hoping that they agree with the planning commission recommendation. And then, Tom, it's a long way of saying, on the 21st of July, we try to hurry up and get as far along as we can so that we have information to share on the floor. But it's gonna be, it's gonna be tight.
Okay, thank you.
You're gonna make.
Can
a
you-
motion.
yeah,
You need a motion
No.
or, right,
No.
and Neil was there. Would that help if
It
some?
might be helpful if one of you were there. Can you go to the last two pages of this last thing, and this will take 2 seconds. So how are we going to evaluate these alternatives? We're gonna everything we do. We get cut off.
I moved too fast.
It's in your,
Yeah, it's a scorecard method.
the scorecard methodology. So I just wanted you to be aware of how we're gonna be evaluating these alternatives. So basically, we have performance criteria, which is on page 31. And then page 32 is feasibility criteria. So the performance criteria, we're gonna evaluate each option and give it a score, comparing it to the no build scenario. Basically, as to how it improves traffic operations, how it improves safety, how it handles parking, pedestrian connectivity, and traffic calming, and it'll get a score compared to no build. And then the feasibility criteria, each of these options will be basically ranked relative to cost, property impact, permitting and agency approvals, and that'll give sort of an overall feasibility criteria. So that we're trying to make what is somewhat of a subjective process and make it objective with a scorecard. So that's the approach we're going to use as we get further along to evaluate and ultimately arrive at hopefully an option that everybody can live with this. But anyway, that's it.
Awesome.
That's all I had to do. Thank you. Really, the big thing was to get the short list of alternatives, which I think you've done.
I have a comment for Tom. Is there any, your recommendations on these options? I'd like to hear from the planner.
Not yet. I mean, I was musing over what Chris said, about making pedestrian only zoning. Randy and I were playing with AI graphics and we created a unit paver, like cobblestone streetscape for, Old Lancaster in the section that Chris just swooshed out for that area. And we wondered what benefit it might have for the farmers market, and to have like overflow space and so forth. But I know that one option H isn't a complicated option. And I agree with what Mike said, that the impact was gonna have, but that would solve a good number of problems.
Yes.
The only problem would be taking out the resin, but we.
Yeah, and it's not anything that we control, nor would we spearhead, but who knows, for all we know, some developer files an application tomorrow to redevelop those properties. Hey, there's an opportunity, that becomes an opportunity to do something like this, so that's the only reason why we.
I mean, Casey's is replacing their bar as we speak right now, so. I don't think they're going to.
Well, no, and we wouldn't, yeah, Faces actually wasn't,
It's adjacent, yeah.
yeah, it's adjacent, but yes.
Yeah, the only other thing, Nick, is according, and Chris, forgive me for saying something that might be out of date, but according to my recollection of the PennDOT rural with criteria in Pennsylvania, the minimum parkway width is 9 feet, so that would be 18.
It is, I wanted to double check it because they've updated their standards, but
Okay, but
You're
the
right.
point is that at 19 feet, and it's not rural, admittedly, for not, for when it's not rural. But,
Yeah.
roads are allowed to be 18 feet.
Hmm.
And 19 is not perfect, it is a traffic calming measure to stay at 19.
and we see the benefits of the speeds, right, it is working.
Yeah.
But if you go to one way, it now creates an opportunity for potentially sidewalks and other things, so.
Yeah.
Becomes a trade-off. Anyway, that's it, I took a lot of your time, but I
Thank you.
appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So we'll be back in August, hopefully with more information.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the PBO / Devon Center Comprehensive Plan alignment.
I just wanted to anchor at the other time on this side. Thank you. So we were going to do this discussion in May and in June, but it got bumped. So here we are. And when we had our initial discussion a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
there were some suggestions that you made on the study area boundaries. And so in the packet that was sent out April 29th, it had a revised study area boundary that reflected the suggestions that you made at the April planning commission meeting. And so the only thing that we did is we took your suggestion and we extended in the yellow line, the boundary to the north to pick up the train station parking to the north. But I got one.
Okay.
Thanks.
But at the same time, we locked off in the previous study area boundary for Devon Center, the western flank, so that residential institutional property that's just below the white box in the top left, and the commercial development where the guardrail runs along Route 30. We didn't think that that was part of the sort of the nirvana Devon Center main, DNA of the streetscape condition. So all ears on the revised boundary. But based on the comments that you made in April, we changed it, extended it to the north, blocked it a little bit on the west. So the importance of the study area boundary is that there's two work products coming out of this initiative. One of which is to come up with a concept stand for Devon's Center. And then the second is guiding principles. So those were the two work products that are part of our scope of work. So if you're comfortable with the boundaries, then we're going to proceed in the rest of this work, with those boundaries. And I think, Bill, you had made some suggestions in particular that would affect the boundaries, but I'm not sure if it does pick up everything that you had previously stated.
No, it doesn't. I had proposed the same boundaries that are in the 2018 comp plan,
Okay,
which include go to the township lines, include the horse show on the east side. And then include, I guess the recovery centers, this and the shopping center here.
and I'd be happy to do that. It's just that I didn't have else to say, so I just was a little bit more sensitized to the Devon horse show.
Yeah, I understand.
I didn't want to draw anything on this grounds during this work project because of the pending litigation.
That seems like the tail web.
Pending?
Yes, there's pending litigation. I think you ought to just decide, like, this is a policy choice for you where you think the line should be. I think you draw it where you think it should be. And I guess that's it. I'll just that'll be
It's zoning litigation or other litigation? Litigation.
they have they have litigation over
I thought that would,
At any rate, I
it
don't,
should resolve soon, but it's not, it's a
that's not,
policy choice for you where you think the
Right.
line should be. And I would just say that's what you do.
I feel strongly the line should.
is there anything,
Where it was in 2018.
Is
Why
there-
would we narrow?
is there anything? By looking at this area, if in the future we decide, hey, maybe this area we're looking at should be bigger, is there anything preventing us from doing that?
I'm gonna defer to.
No, I mean, I think what. You should just put the line where you think it should be from a planning standpoint.
And it took 350 years for you to draw the line, but there's a chance that in another 350, you could draw it, So like from the beginning, I've heard the line should go where you think the line should go.
100%. And this is a line for study.
Yes.
It's not a line for
It is
impact,
it's your aspiration.
anything else.
It's your aspiration, it's not your plan to build, it's what you think it should be. If that was a foreign country and you thought it should go into a foreign country, then I would say draw the line where you think it should go. Let others be the practical. Your job in this exercise is an aspirational exercise, correct? From the beginning, it was an aspirational exercise when you were fomenting it, not a practical exercise.
What about the bowling alley though?
Yeah, I agree with that
Yeah.
too.
So.
And the RCA and the whatever properties behind it. It's
Purely from an aspirational planning perspective. For what is called the Devon Center. I would say that Devon Center, we should study the apartment complex that is behind the Recovery Centers of America. I think we should include the bowling alley. And I think that the Devon Center really extends to the different township line eastward.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's consistent with,
The
we don't pull this out of thin air, that's consistent with the 2018 comp plan and which is referenced in terms of one of the goals being establish a vision the Devon Center. That doesn't mean that everything that's in that border needs to look the same, do any, but it needs to be subject of the study.
Okay. Will do. Okay, so that's item number one. Item number two is, it's been a while since the 2018 conflict. It's been a while since the Devon Center plan was started and stuff. And so, pretending I know nothing about any of that, I had some questions that I needed your input on.
Thanks.
And so one of these questions, line of them, only easy peasy, but the idea would be just to give me the benefit of your overarching, view about number one, preferred outcome, and most needed improvements, number two. Number three is, where did the word center come from? I mean, there's no Wayne Center and Bedford Center and Paley Center and Wayne Center, and somehow the word center cropped up, and suggestions beyond what's mentioned in chapter 6, which has a lot to do with enhancement and streetscape, and then other questions that we'll go over. But Bill, since you were talking about the comp plan of 2018, and I think in large part, the thought was, if the Devon Center plan that followed the comp plan hadn't been begun, and this was like this new, since the first initiative after the comp plan, would we just say, go back to the comp plan and the preferred outcome is whatever the comp plan says? Or now that there's 8 years since the comp plan, is it a new day? Is there a new vision for what the preferred outcome is? So Bill, do you have a suggestion, since it's in your backyard?
Yeah, I do. No, and it's, the short answer is both, Tom. And the recommendations from the comp plan is proactively direct development in Devon Center through a public process that identifies a clear vision for the area.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to accomplish. So I don't think that puts the cart before the horse in any way. I understand that a lot transpired since then, positive and negative. But I don't, it seems to me like since that happened, we've just dropped that goal. And I think that goal was broad enough. That's what I'd like to pick back up.
Okay,
A clear vision for the area.
okay,
I don't think the comp plan has anything much more than that in terms of what that vision is.
Yeah.
It's pretty vague. It's pretty. It's
I mean,
literally that's the recommendation.
It does touch on what kind of development should be there, the types of uses.
It's just develop and enhance public space.
Yeah.
Just making sure this
There's
is a
certain
subject, which I agree with. Yeah.
so in those respects, it would be kind of to ratify or to affirm or
Yeah.
reaffirm what the comp plan said.
Correct. And if we're going through another
Flesh it out.
yeah. My understanding is you typically do these every 10-ish years, right? So it would, to me, it'd be a shame if the 10-year comp plan in 2028 came up with establish a vision, then we have gone 10 years without establishing a vision.
Right. Okay, so anyway, number 3, and bear in mind, I just don't know the answer. Where did the word center come from? And do we perceive Devon as Devon Center, a normative, unincorporated low-key village? So do we perceive it as Devon Center or a normative, unincorporated low-key village? Or a place that resonates around the Devon train station or other identity? So
I can give you my 2 cents, but
Yeah.
Mike, you may know more about like the genesis of where the Devon Center came
I
from.
think that's just what the zoning district has always been called. I mean, I ideally, at the end of this process, I think it would be great if decade from now, what we see there is is a center, like a gathering place for people. I mean, I'd almost call this more of like the gateway to the township, you know, it's like the Devon Gateway. You know, it's. You know, coming into the Easttown Township, that's what hits you, it's this district and. You know, it should be a welcoming place, it should be a place where, you know, with the. For, you know, so you see pedestrians, you see, you know. Restaurants or something like that, you see, it's not dead on a Saturday night at 7 o'clock, you know, it's not businesses with their lights shut off at 7 o'clock on Saturday night, you know.
Yeah, my 2 cents there would be, yeah, it's, I wouldn't get hung up on the terminology,
Yeah.
but I think some of the broad goals that Easttown has is increasing pedestrian and bicycle accessibility, and green public spaces. And in my mind, this is within the township has a lot of potential for those things.
Yes.
And with the train station is an obvious node for all types of pedestrian and vehicle pedestrian travel. So I think that's why
Sure.
if you would call it a center, just because of that node, not because it needs to have uses X, Y, and Z or that kind of thing. I think it's.
Yeah, and to Mike's point where he said that's what the zoning was called. And being a little poetic in the proposal, what I said, real quick, I'll summarize. In 2026, there's an opportunity to look at that in a new light. The sun rises first in Easttown Township, and Devon is truly a gateway to Easttown. When one travels west along Route 30 for different. So I kind of poetically in the proposal called it Devon Gateway, because I thought it was more Devon Gateway than it was Devon Center, because Devon Center is a zoning term.
That makes sense to me. I don't want it, if people get hung up the connotation that means specific uses or specific look and feel, that's not what we're trying to get at.
Okay. And then, you know, part of our task is to do these guiding principles in the concept plan. But you've already mentioned welcoming place, attractive to pedestrian, gathering place, restaurants, good accessibility, clean public spaces, magnet of the train station. So are there any other overarching suggestions that come to mind that relate to this Devon Gateway concept? So here's what my take was. When about 30 years ago, I did enhancement plans for Gettysburg and New Oxford. And at that time, I learned about the 1928 Lincoln Highway Association. And in New Oxford, we did signage from the Lincoln Highway Association, and we got grants from that agency, and you come through the town and there's wayfinding signs, and then there's granite monumentation on how many miles it is to Ligonier and how many miles it is to Lancaster and Philadelphia with these signs. And so Route 30 was hatched as the Lincoln Highway in 1928, connecting New York to California, and places like Gettysburg, New Oxford, Ligonier, obviously Ardmore, Thorndale, what have you. But in terms of the historic thoroughfare, do we want to think about any kind of historical theme with signage to let people know about this venerable Lincoln Highway as a historic byway?
Be a great idea.
Pardon me?
I think it would be a great idea. It was the first macadam highway in the country.
Sure. I think it went from Times Square to Santa Monica Pier. That's origin destination.
I'm pretty sure Devon used to be a resort too.
Yeah.
There was a massive.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, massive.
It's not one now.
But in terms of that historic nature, it doesn't speak to you now. I mean, the motorist and the pedestrian, you wouldn't really, I mean.
Yeah.
You're from here and you're a member of the different Easttown Historical, you would know those things, but otherwise you wouldn't. So the question is, do we want to tell that story? Do we want to have some messaging in that regard?
I mean. In a perfect world, yes, I wouldn't put that above trying to create, you know, the pedestrian areas, the green spaces and the sidewalk, like, I prioritize that over.
So there's some sense of place.
Yeah,
But I do agree with that, Tom, and I think, I don't know if that's a component of the complete street study that's being done in Berlin. I would certainly suggest that whatever nod we make to that.
Yeah.
We extend through
Okay,
Devon, but I wouldn't say it's a priority problem to solve.
yeah.
okay. Very good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the signage is more focused for the historical aspects for authority, and the complete streets, for everything else too.
Sure.
But I know Mike said at the path that it is first thing you see most people when they're traveling to Easttown Township, and there isn't no distinction right now that you would know you're entering Easttown or Devon or the history of the place or any of that.
Okay.
Berlin now, the changing with Berlin.
Yeah, right. And that's why I think we just pick up on the good work they're doing there. Incorporate that. I'm not trying to do anything different, anything.
And number 6 is talking about how do we feel about an innovative breeding solution. Informed by, for example, Easttown Township EAC type focus on complete street tree program, planters, hanging baskets, rain gardens, and other infrastructure. Do we want that to punch through and be a statement that we see?
I mean, it'd be cool if we could do it. I mean, I know the Newtown Township has a very extensive hanging basket program. I mean, I know it's at least 15 to 20 years ago, it was funded by the developers of the township, and I don't know if that's still, they're paying the water those employees out all the time. You know, if we could get, you know, some of our corporate neighbors, you know, that'd be something cool.
I agree. And one of the big themes I've been harping on is related to this, like that these all will be wonderful things, but the current PBO zoning is just parking.
Yeah.
So let's try to avoid paving more of it over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or not having it remain gravel lots and auto repair places.
Right.
Before we talk about hanging baskets, but this is all in keeping in the theme, I think, that is township wide, but where Devon is probably the furthest behind, it has the most potential with respect to township wide goals. That's my opinion.
Very good.
Can we make comments?
Sure.
I love 5 and 6. We have a friend from Delaware County who said, you know, I don't know what's so special about the main line. Route 30 looks like McDade Boulevard. No. You know? So I just think both of them are wonderful ideas.
Okay, thank you. And then number 7, and I gotta tell you the story. In 73, I started working at Weston first 2 years after grad school. And my colleague said, Thorndale was the armpit of Route 30 in Chester County. Could anything ever happen in Thorndale? In 1988, I did the Lincoln Highway Beautification Overlay District. Bill Anderson did the shopping center at Municipal Drive in Route 30. He was the guinea pig. He did all the street lights, street trees, banners, sidewalks, crosswalks, bus shelters. And it set the stage for what the Wawa across from the train station did, and the new Wawa on the other end. And a lot of the infill development, it's taken 28 years, but a lot of the infill development has that ingredient to it. So for number 7, this idea of transformative solution, which is not McDade Boulevard, that would, punch out the idea of more sidewalks, crosswalks, arbors, pergolas, bollards. I even thought, like, for example, you're coming from the train station now as the pedestrian, and that new crosswalk is right there, right by anthropology. Having this really cool arbor on both sides, it's just like a little portal, some friendly pedestrian street feature that starts to make a statement and could be serving as some kind of connective tissue wherever there are crosswalks. There could be some kind of cool structure, probably easily spec'd like Walpole woodworkers from Massachusetts is like the Cadillac of that. But the other notion would be, not to take anything away from 5 or 6, but to do what they did in Cowan Township and Thorndale, which it just took a vision and cooperative developers when they did their project, to fit into that. So any thoughts on number 7? Is it just like bring it to as much as we can for those items?
Yeah, I don't object to any of them, certainly. But again, just don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good, and
I never heard that. I actually like that. I read that too.
that'd be my only concern, and I do think, I mean, with the ped bike committee that we're in, there's the study that they're doing. Like they led off with saying they wanted it to be as easy to be a pedestrian or cyclist to get from one end of the township to the others as a motorist. I was like, that's a pretty lofty goal. But if that's literally direction they want to go, then let's start with what is a very high pedestrian traffic area and it's not beautified in any way.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe be mindful of some of the placement of some of these features, for sight distance and things like that.
Okay.
For all those.
Okay.
Gentlemen here.
Yeah.
As someone who lives and regularly walks through this area, I would say that you might want to start with just not making it pedestrian hostile.
Yeah.
I mean, because right now it's hostile to
Yes.
pedestrians.
Agreed.
I mean, even just on Berkeley, getting that one little extra block of sidewalk was like, wow, it's significantly easier to get through this section of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, just going along Route 30, there's like, if it snows, you have to walk in the middle of the street. But like, I mean, next to the horse show, there's like the giant blue wall.
Yeah.
It's actively hostile to pedestrians.
Mhm.
So just being able to make it so that you can walk would be a tremendous step up from what it is now.
Yeah, good point. And then number 8, so the points that were mentioned on the number 3, question is, should we advocate, encourage, or otherwise promote types of retail that might be attractive, such as, a coffee shop, the ice cream store, cafe, bookstore, bagel shop. Now, when Stacy was with us in April, she said, hey, easy on the new coffee shop. We got one of those in Berlin.
Too bad.
I think people in Devon would rather have coffee closer to them than to go, always to Berlin.
Yeah.
But, and not to take anything away from Handles, but the point would be, if we could get some of those
Uses.
smaller uses there, then it starts to have a different identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the biggest thing beyond creating the vision and the wish list and all that is that we have to acknowledge the PBO zoning right now is parking heavy, traditional suburban retail that is, or suburban commercial that doesn't achieve anything in the town plan. And this is what I pounded the table on the last year to try to get us to study it.
Right.
So we could come up with a wish list that's a dozen items long. If we don't change the zoning, nothing's gonna change other than us investing dollars here or there in sidewalks to nowhere and.
So I
Yeah,
have a
the
question
exercise
related
here.
To that,
I might.
Yeah,
go
go
ahead
ahead,
and
Don.
answer your comment first. I believe it's my understanding is the exercise here is what we're doing is looking at the vision and those types of
That's next
things
step.
would be the next step that would come down the road. Is that?
yeah, because if, so right now, you're not allowed to do these things, it's against the law to do them in East Town. So this isn't about doing them, this is about the vision that you all as a community, I think that's it, right? As a community, you're saying you want these things. So is the takeaway that all those things that Tom said and you all seem to endorse, they have to be in the vision that he creates for you.
I understand, and that bought into that process, and maybe I'm jumping ahead. Knowing what we went through before, where we had a bunch of great ideas and we ended up leaving them all on the table because people were afraid of changing the zoning. We could come up with beautifying pedestrian access that just goes to a parking lot. If we don't acknowledge that we need to encourage different uses or change the look and feel or change. We're gonna keep PB, I know, my understanding is we need to have a PBO zoning in the township someplace. Or a bunch of those uses,
We need
which
to-
is why we didn't look at this as a PBO zoning change. We looked
We
at, we
need
did
to
look at
we
a
need to
different
have
area.
every use somewhere in the township, essentially. We don't have to have PBO zoning, but we have to account for everything within the township.
Bill, I think I'm trying to endorse what you're saying, not oppose.
I
it. I
understood,
hope you
yeah.
heard it that way, that
I did.
if this becomes an exercise on how to get these things, then you have not made any progress because these things are against the law in East Town. If this becomes an exercise that this is our vision, we want these kind of things, then you've taken the first step. And I think that's what the exercise is. It's to create a vision that lets you build around the steps that you would take.
Yes,
I hope that's right, yeah.
yeah,
So
I
creating
don't
creating a
disagree.
vision now, and we have to put it in place later, right?
I am just taking.
I think so.
Yeah.
And part of this is
Yes.
because when the zoning came up, they said, well, how do we know that we want to change the zoning? We don't have a vision.
We haven't.
So
right.
presumably the next step would be, hey, we want these kind of things. They're against the law in East Town. How do we get
How do
them?
we
We
change
change the zoning because we have a vision that says we want these things.
I'm on
I
board.
think that's the plan. I hope it is at least. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Well spoken, well stated. On number 9, I just want to tell a story from the mid-90s. So in 93, I first got hired by East Town, who did the first preparation of his space developmental resource plan. During which time, at various planning commission meetings, one car dealership after another would come in. And applicants claimed in each case they were code compliant plans. And like Speedcraft Enterprises, which used to sell the BMWs. It's about the midpoint of the south side. I don't know what they're called anymore. But they came in with like little spinach plants along the front. I mean, it's hardly noticeable plants that they said was code compliant. So at the time, about 1995, the planning commission said, we need to come up with a theme for the car dealership scape. And what can we call it? And I said, well, we need to get the Speedcraft to come in with a more robust planting plan, even if it's low plants like Anthony Waters, Spirea, beautiful pink color in July and August. And one of the members of the planning commission asked me to give it some thought and come back at the next meeting with a suggestion. And I called it the Emerald Necklace, that all the car dealerships would have a thematically unified landscape theme so that, and Tom Esty knows this very well, in Hilton Head, like when you go to the Walmart at Indigo Run,
You can't find it.
you can't find it because the landscape along the William Hilton Highway is just incredibly code compliant, for Hilton Head. So I was thinking the cumulative vision would be that once it gets implemented and you drove through Devon, you would say, wow, this is a really cool place. It's transformative. It looks way different from when I grew up or when I used to work there, when I was in college, whatever the case may be. So the reason I write number 9, and it's more, give it some thought so that in upcoming months when we talk about it, what other ideas do we have to make Devon more functional and effective? Is it architecture? Is it changes to anything on the lot that we can think of? The anthropology came in, it was a whole different statement, from an architectural standpoint. Do we want to suggest that in addition to some of the items that we already talked about, that there would be a concerted effort to think about the architecture of Devon, that it would speak to us in a certain way. So I just don't know what other items, thinking outside the box, we can document to get this vision ratified. So, Bill, any first
Yeah, I got
reactions?
a couple. The one would be, we're not, I think, ties into some of the other questions you have, Thomas. We want to acknowledge the history of Devon, and we want to build upon that. And it's why, at risk of touching the third rail, that's why I think the horse show is incredibly charming when I'm in there 2 days a year. And the rest of the year, I'm walking past the blue wall with no sidewalk. So I don't know if this is part of this purview, but I think rather than saying, hey, what kind of redevelopment on some of the, the gas station parcels or things like that are in this section, we say, what can we take our existing uses and figure out a way to make Devon more functional and attractive, with what we have and with the history that we have. It's a broad question, but I think, that's my 2 cents.
Tom, can I ask you a question about number 8?
Go for it.
So in addition to like advocating, encouraging and promoting types of uses, is any part of this exercise maybe looking at some types of uses that we don't think would be good for that area, like would be better suited somewhere else, like maybe any additional new car dealership should not be in Devon Center, or any additional like new gas station might be better suited in what is down by like where Tesla is now, or something like that, is that something that we could include in this exercise?
Yeah, I remember seeing a cartoon, like when little coffee shops started to become popular in Westchester at the French Corner at South Walnut and Minor. Johnny Lee, the owner chef, had a little cartoon from Paris that said croissants and filter.
Yeah.
He had the cafe, and then right next to it was like a quarry landfill operation. And then he had the big X through it. So the fact is that International Council of Shopping Centers in 2009 did a study to say, why do the malls like King of Prussia Mall survive? Why are they attractive? And they had the 9-second rule that when you're walking along a streetscape and there's a continuation of the features and the attractions, you keep walking, all of a sudden you get to a bad use, a use that's like gritty or industrial or a car maintenance shop. And you don't have, what you do is you walk across the street because you no longer want to have that continuum. So the question would be, what can we do to enhance the walkability so that 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's more continuous, it's more graceful, and it's not interrupted by uses that are, in addition, anti-pedestrian or a family comes from out of town, you go, oh, let's take a walk in
Yeah.
Devon along Route 30.
Right.
There'll be some reason that you'd want to go there. There's some kind of fun part of being there. So anyway, the other part is like when Westchester started to, after Iron Hill first got in '99, the borough did some streetscape improvements and people said, oh, I know when they come into Westchester from the Exley area. It's the streetlights that tell me at night there's a different character. So I've been trying to do some of the lighting inspections that I do with the landscape plants here at like midnight when the lights are on. And then I drive through Devon to see what lights are on and what lights are off and what type of street lights there are. And they're all over the place. I mean, it's just very, shoebox and this and that. But that new car dealership, very small lot, it's Maserati. Boy, they did a heck of a job. The sidewalk and the landscaping and the street light and so forth. And I was trying to picture, wouldn't it be great if we had that as a continuum so that from dusk to dawn, you would come through Devon and you would have a different feeling, but you would different from what you have today. So, the streetlights, I think, are also part of, that attractiveness opportunity. So Nick, any other thoughts come to mind?
No, the one you mentioned earlier about, driving through Devon. Like, I guess was it Newtown, I guess the planter who talked about, what about like banners hanging?
Sure.
Maybe beans at certain time of the year for something going on at the horse show, put those banners up or something, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes when I drive through the corner, right, you're like, oh, okay, I'm somewhere.
Yeah, and I think programmatically that bodes well when there's like a Main Street manager or some type of business improvement district or business association. But there's nothing that would prevent that from happening. You just have to come up with like, what's the right mechanism to use? Because that would also tell a story. If there was a wayfinding banner system. I know in the catalog that Kalamazoo Banner Works has, a lot of towns will have the dual mounted banners on the street poles. And it just kind of marches the whole way through town. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, when they transformed Route 66, the first thing they did was the street lights and the banners. And you would go down Route 66, the main street in Albuquerque, and you would go, oh my gosh, look what they did. This place was a dump before. And then all of a sudden, it looked great. So that's a good idea. So anyway, okay, well, I have a lot of good notes here, and I think what would sweeten this is on the pages that tell the story of the vision. I would take photos of places that are good or could use enhancement that exist today, and then include photos from other places as like inspiration. That would say it could be like this. Just so that it would sort of tell the story as to what we would aspire to. So, any other thoughts? Alina, I don't know if there's anybody in the public
No.
problem tonight.
Yeah.
No.
No public comment.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about beautification things and stuff like that. But I think there really needs to be an emphasis on, I mean, if you're gonna do this and try and make this as a place that you want people to come to, kind of have to ask yourself what it is that we want people, what do we need to have in the area to get people to come? Because right now you've got car dealerships and banks and
Gas stations.
gas stations and laboratories
shops.
and recovery centers. No one's coming to visit those. you know. If you're actually trying to look at it as in terms of, we would like to make this a place where people want to come to. You need to give them a reason to come. I mean, it's great that if it looks nice as you're driving through. But they're gonna drive through, that's somewhere where they want to go.
That's what we're talking about, like the types of uses to encourage and.
Right, but it's,
Yeah,
And I think that speaks to the zoning point that Bill's making, that right now the zoning doesn't facilitate village, the zoning facilitates suburbs.
Yeah, agree. And. So hey, I'm definitely not the most patient person, but like I understand. It's bought in for this is what things look like. Is it my take, and I wasn't first that closely involved in the past, was the development kind of came first and met such resistance that we ended up going backwards in terms of trying to achieve the vision. So to the extent even if most of this is trying to lay the groundwork for what we want, that this is not going to turn into a generic high density drive-through location, that we're leaning on the things that make it special, and hopefully that will allow us to do the things we need to do. To actually encourage the right uses, the right kind of redevelopment. And I think even a minor, honestly, like the silver lining is the bar is so damn low. Both with respect to just trying to make it more pedestrian accessible, but also with respect to just trying to be less hostile to people who may want to invest in the neighborhood. But let's just do those two things. Let's just addition by subtraction. But I think I agree, we gotta start with establishing the vision like the comp plan laid out.
Yeah, good point. And I think the other aspect would be of perhaps the massing of buildings and the height of buildings that showed up in the early Devon Center was more akin to TOD, transit oriented development, the train station. And obviously if you start with Ardmore and what's happening there as sort of like one major sort of massing, and you go all the way to the city of Lancaster, most of the in-betweens, except for one building in Gettysburg, are 3-ish stories. There's not a whole lot of 4 and 5 story. The Chetwynd Apartments, right on the west side of Bryn Mawr, is the only 7-story building within 300 feet of Route 30 between St. Charles Borromeo Seminary and the city of Lancaster. Otherwise, most of the buildings are 3-4 stories, and you don't have the 5, 6, 7, and that's what I think was tipping the sensitivities that was going on in Devon, because that was a spike that wasn't normative. So anyway, okay. So any other thoughts for the good of the order?
we're good.
We're good. Okay. Thanks so much.
All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. Any public comment? Okay, no public comment. We have nothing online.
No, nothing online, just a general comment that it's coming up at that time that we should start thinking about potential projects for 2027. So for the next meeting, I guess maybe we can put together a draft list and coordinate with the ped bike group to get their ideas as well.
All right, next meeting is Tuesday.
We're real quick one. I don't know if we talked about it with my other project, that Conestoga Road sidewalk. The one grant we applied for that was denied, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, we
don't need to talk about it now, but I would talk about other options and potentially funding that, because I still think that is.
Wait, can we just apply for it again next year?
The grant application is open until August 31st, so we're gonna resubmit.
Okay,
See,
I'm good.
We sort of laid that with the supervisors, so all happening at the staff level, no action needed on your part, unless you wanted to stop it, sort of thing.
No.
All
I
right,
was disappointed
the
here.
next meeting is Tuesday, August 4th. Okay, all right. Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna be here.